It gives me great pleasure to present the Canadian Jewish Literary Award for Best Book in the category of History to Derek Penslar for his work Theodor Herzl, The Charismatic Leader, published by Yale University Press. Professor Penslar taught at the U of T for many years and now splits his time between Toronto and Cambridge, Massachusetts, where he teaches at Harvard. His previous books include Jews and the Military, A History, and Shylock's Children, Economics and Jewish Identity in Modern Europe. Professor Penslar, the jury found your book thoroughly engaging, deeply insightful, and pristinely erudite, yet entirely readable. For a historical figure about whom hundreds of thousands of pages have already been written, this book is all the more remarkable for the ways that it draws together different methodological approaches, at times deep into the biographical and psychological details of this cosmopolitan intellectual, and at times attuned to the diverse perspectives of a truly diverse group of modern Jews who related to and were inspired to action by his writings. Professor Penslar, you have managed to synthesize a fractious and overdetermined debate about Herzl in a judicious manner, a truly important task for the historian today. The only difficulty our jury had with your book was deciding which category it would win for, history, biography, or Jewish thought and culture, since it fits so readily into each. We hope the book is widely read and engaged with by a host of readers in the many conversations about Zionism and Israel afoot in our country and worldwide. Congratulations again, Professor Penslar.
Thank you, David. Thank you to the other members of the jury. It is a tremendous honor to have been given this award. And what makes me especially happy about it is that the jury recognizes the contributions of so many scholars before me who have written on Herzl and on early Zionism, and that, yes, as they say, I am standing on the shoulder of giants, and yet I did try to bring something new to the biography, and I'm glad that you found it enjoyable. Herzl is the subject of dozens of biographies, but they have fallen into, I would think, a couple of extreme varieties. There are those that mythologize him and that romanticize him into something larger than life, but in a way they do him a disservice because he was a human being. And it's precisely his frailties as a human being that help make his greatness all the more interesting. But there are also works about Herzl that don't just acknowledge his many foibles, and he was a troubled and difficult man, but they revel in them. And I didn't want to do either. I wanted to write a book about a complicated man, a man who was troubled, and yet who knew how to confront his troubles and deal with them and channel his desires and his energies into something not just constructive, but something truly great. And this is why I found the book so fascinating. At first, I thought it would be an easy thing to simply review some of his standard published writings, but the more I got into it, I realized that despite all that's been written on Herzl, there are many letters, many archival documents, many important sources that haven't been used. And it's not just a question of sources for their own sake. They're sources from people who knew Herzl and the exchange between them, because that's one of the most important things I wanted to do in the book, is to understand the dialogic nature of great leadership, the dialogic nature of charisma. That if Herzl had been born in the year 1980 or 1990 in Toronto, he might not have achieved greatness at all. He was the right man in the right place and at the right time. And if he became a great leader and a great charismatic, it's because his following needed a leader and a charismatic. A final mystery that I have tried to solve in the book and that I hope I've helped illuminate for readers is how this man, who was an upper middle class, Viennese, bourgeois, assimilated Jew, became a global sensation, a celebrity, having meetings with the German Kaiser, the British foreign minister, the Austrian minister's president, and even the Pope. And the mystery is solved when we understand the importance of journalism in that era. And that Herzl, although his dreams to be a great playwright were never fully realized, was a truly gifted and brilliant journalist. People wanted access to him, people wanted to meet him because of his fame, but also people appreciated the greatness of his prose. And I'm very grateful that the jury has found my own book to be readable and fun to get into. But I want to tell you all what a great pleasure it was for me to read Herzl's journalistic writings in the original, not just the writings about Zionism, but his many pieces about society, about politics, about culture. If I have captured some of the complexity of this man, the depth of his accomplishments, and the beauty of his artistic talent, then I'm very happy indeed. Thank you again.
So, Professor Penslar, I love the kind of basic claim, or one of the claims that you have, in that Herzl is a kind of Rorschach, insofar as a diverse set of Jews project all kinds of different hopes and expectations and meanings of him onto him, both when he's alive and afterwards in historiography. I was hoping you could maybe just highlight maybe the three most important, let's call them projections, onto Herzl.
Well, in his own lifetime, there were those who saw him as a latter-day Messiah figure, and even secular Jews. There's the story from the First Zionist Congress that is not apocryphal, because the man who did this odd thing actually confessed to it. A non-religious Russian Jewish journalist who could not stop himself from rising to his feet at the First Zionist Congress and shouting, "Yechia Melech, long live the king." Seeing Herzl in this way, which of course is a projection, and it represents something very deep in the psyche of Eastern European Jewry, if not Jewry throughout the world. But maybe I should, just for a couple of other examples, go into the present, because what really fascinates me about Herzl is how every generation invents new ones. And even today in the state of Israel, Herzl is often invoked by the left as a symbol of everything Zionism stands for in terms of inclusiveness, social progressive thought, a society in which, and as in Herzl's novel Alt Neuland, Arabs and Jews live completely equally. And so the left has constructed an image of Herzl, which is not entirely inaccurate, but it is somewhat selective. And then we have groups like on the right, like Im Tirtzu, which has even taken Herzl's most famous saying, Im Tirtzu ein zo agada, if you will it, it is no tale, no fairy tale. And they construct an image of Herzl as a kind of right-wing nationalist. And there are even people who go so far as to say that he was a born-again Jew, and they try to fit him into religious Zionism. You know, I think that it's probably much closer to fit Herzl into the leftist image than into these more, I'd say, extreme nationalistic and religious visions. But they all are selective, and everybody is using Herzl to justify what they think Zionism is, because Herzl is the ultimate brand. And if you can use Herzl to justify what you believe, then, as it were, you've won the argument.
Fascinating. Professional historians have kind of moved away from what they sometimes call big man history quite a while ago. It's pretty out of fashion, but your book makes the case for the role of these deeply personal, even psychological forces as important shapers of massive, social and political movements. I wondered if you wanted to talk about, is big man history back, or can it be, or maybe more generally, what do you think about the project of bringing psychobiography and social or political history together?
It's a tough question, and it's something I'm struggling with now that I've finished the biography, because my books until now were not like this. I wrote scholarly books that dealt with, as historians usually do, aggregates, social forces, structures, and there were people in there, but you didn't really see the people as agents, as creating the world around them. And there's something wrong with that. And especially if we come up with arguments that seem to work on a macro level, but then we look at individuals and we see that they didn't necessarily make the choices we think they're going to make. It's like the difference between quantum physics and Newtonian physics. We have to understand how things work on the small level as well as the large. So what I'm hoping a book like this can do is show you that the greatness of the individual does matter. It is a necessary but not sufficient precondition for political and social change. Again, the right time, the right place, the right person. At the end of the day, Herzl was able to speak to a movement that was already in formation and that he pushed to the next level. And let's not exaggerate it. Herzl did not create the Jewish state. Herzl was an essential figure along the way. The man who really, as it were, carried the ball into the end zone was Chaim Weizmann, and who continued the pattern of negotiations with great powers, particularly with Britain, that Herzl had started. So I think we do need a holistic understanding that great people help make history. And there are power differentials in history. There are people who have more influence than others. And without making any political statements, the fact is that if we look at what's happening in the world today, including south of the border, it is clear that small numbers of individuals make huge differences. whether one is happy with those differences or not. So greatness does matter. Herzl was a great leader, and I believe that this can and must be integrated into the study of broader social forces.
It's been wonderful speaking with you, Professor Penslar, and congratulations once again. And if you're watching this video, go out and buy a copy of the book. You'll be happy you did.
Thank you very much.